Okay. Hello, good evening, everyone. I'd like to.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Holding Talk. I'd like to welcome you to another. Okay, permit me quickly to. I'd like to mute everyone to avoid the background talks. I would only unmute when you need to talk. Okay. So I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Holding Talks. Holding Talks is an interactive theater session of the Aroja Royal Theater. Back in 2011, we started what we call play reading party, where we hold play reading sessions and invite the playwrights, to give further insights into his play and to answer to other questions from readers and from artists as well. You know, many a times we just pick up a play from the shelf and we get on stage with it without deeply understanding the concept or the principle or the idea that the playwright, was trying to put across. So that was what gave birth to what we started doing in 2011, title called Play Reading Party. And that ran for about 7 years at almost about 4-6 reading sessions in a year. But we have to stop at some point because of funding challenges and some other very petty issues. And so we remolded it. And this year we started again. And incidentally, our first reading session, our first play reading session for the year happened to be our reading of Miss Julie by August Strindberg. And of course, immediately after that, we were meant to be doing that on a quarterly basis, but then COVID-19 chanced on us and we were all locked down at home. So we needed to think of what more to do. And so we decided to come on the digital platform. And so we have this Holding Talk session, which is a performed reading, which is a performance reading of
In case you can hear me, I can't hear you, please.
I'm afraid you disappeared, Jerry.
I hear you.
Sorry for that transmission. I hope this won't be a permanent feature of today's session. It's a network, problem. So, today we have with us one of our very big brother in the field of theater, in person of Mr. Makinde Adeniran. And I will just quickly give a quick background to why we are here today and the reason why we have His Excellency, the Ambassador of Sweden here. Back in 2016, there was need for us to commemorate the death anniversary. We decided that, why don't we commemorate the death anniversary of Thomas Tranströmer, who was a Swedish poet and writer. And the ambassador then, Mr. Kilander, said, if we are going to celebrate anybody in Sweden, he would like the person to be celebrated alongside another writer in Nigeria. And of course, Wole Soyinka, being a Nobel winner, became our immediate choice. And so we needed to write a play. And that was where Mr. Makinde came in then. We ambushed him We sent him our brief, and then that gave birth to the play. We are going to read some part of it today, What the Hunter Saw. And so that you have the ambassador of Sweden here today is not by accident. It is because the play we are reading today also has something to do about Sweden. So I like to quickly recognize the presence of His Excellency Carl Michael Grants, who is the ambassador of Sweden to Nigeria, and immediately to have him give a brief remark. Your Excellency, sir.
Thank you, Jerry. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Fine. Thank you, dear Jerry, for this kind introduction. As Mr. Adeniran just mentioned, my name is Carl Michael Grants, and I am the ambassador of Sweden to Nigeria, and to Ghana and to Cameroon, actually. I was immediately delighted when you asked me to make a few introductory remarks for this virtual session of a play by Mr. Makinde Adeniran, an adaptation of the fusion of Mr. Wole Soyinka, the most prominent, I would say, of all Nigerian authors, and Mr. Thomas Tranströmer, Sweden's perhaps most famous poet. It sounded really like a fascinating mixture, I would say. And I know that the Royal Roger Theatre and Mr. Jerry Adeniran himself have been devoted to Swedish literature for a long time, and Swedish theatre as well. And we have worked closely, as you mentioned, together during many years. I arrived last year, but there were ambassadors before me. And as you mentioned, our last cooperation was a reading of the play by August Strindberg, Miss Julie, in my residence just before the COVID-19 pandemic broke out. But I appreciate this cooperation very much. I have also learned that you organized an event in 1916 with the assistance of the Swedish Embassy, as you mentioned, Tranströmer meets Soyinka, interpreted into a performance by Mr. Makinde Adeniran, also behind today's interactive theatre session on his play, What the Hunter Saw. I'm not sure how well you know, the participants know about Thomas Tranströmer and how well known he is actually to the Nigerian audience. So let me introduce him just very briefly. Mr. Tranströmer was born in Stockholm, the Swedish capital, in 1931, between the wars. And he showed extraordinary talent at a very early age. Already in 1948, at the age of 16 years only, he had his first poems published in a school paper at his school in Stockholm. He grew up with his mother. His father had remarried. At Folkungagatan, a street in the area of Södermalm in southern Stockholm, just a few blocks from my own apartment, actually. So I know this area very well. He spent summers in the archipelago of Stockholm, that is out on the islands. And his poetry was at a very early stage influenced by nature. He graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Literature and Poetry, and also with a second diploma as a psychologist. And as a matter of fact, he worked for many years as a psychologist in Swedish prisons, talking to the prisoners. His breakthrough as a poet came in 1954 with a collection named 17 Poems, which was to be followed by many literary publications. And his works have been translated into more than 60 languages all over the world. The mystery of life, dreams, and nature are very common aspects of Tranströmer's poems. And his poems are usually short and well balanced And later in life, he became a very appreciated character for his personal interpretation of the Japanese haiku poems. He's very short, very strict. You know, the kind of Japanese poetry. So he turned it into his own Swedish interpretation, I would say. In 1990, however, Tomas Tranströmer very sadly had a stroke, which resulted in aphasia and paralyzation of the right side of his body. So he lost his speech. He couldn't speak anymore, but he continued to write poetry. And in 2011, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature from the hands of His Majesty the King of Sweden, according to the Royal Swedish Academy, because through his condensed, translucent images, he gives us a fresh access to reality. And Tomas Tranströmer, he died 4 years later. So with this short, very short and brief reminder of the poet, I look forward very much to this performance and talks with great excitement. Thank you for your attention. Back to you, Jerry.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We're really very pleased with this introduction you have given into the life of Tomas Tranströmer. I mean, I remember we struggled a lot to pronounce that name then. Thank you so much. I'd like to quickly at this point introduce to you again our guest today. He's a playwright and an actor and a director. At the moment, Mr. Makinde Adeniran is, among other things, the chairman of the National Association of Nigerian Theatre Arts Practitioners, the Lagos chapter. And so you understand who it is. I'd like to call on, just register your presence if you are here, and I can see you already. Anyway, we are going to go into the short excerpt performance of the play now. So I'll just quickly unmute my actors. I will unmute them. I have with me Ezra Boboy, Osazua Ehibo, Oluwaseun Odukoya, and Israel Isaac. Here we go. Isaac, you might need to unmute from your hand. Okay, we are good. Okay.
Can we start?
Yes, please.
Aláhèrè owó máa gbọ́ bí mo ti ń sọ. Ògún máa gbọ́ bí mo ti ń sọ. Man of the moment. Man of the modest world, hear me. Ògún, who to right a wrong, emptied reservoirs of blood in heaven, yet raged with thirst. I read his savage beauty on black brow in depths of molten bronze aflame. Beyond their eyes fixated distances and tremble. Ògún, Rogbodiyambo.
What's up? Meander how it will. The river ends in sea, in the ocean's savage waves. Our floods alluvial paths will spring the shrunken seas.
Ògún, let the oppressors know that.
In the time of race, no beauty slights the dweckers. In time of strength, the elephant stands alone. In time of hunt, the lion's grace is holy. In time of flight, The egret mocks the envious. In time of strife, none vies with him of 7 parts. Ogun.
May my request be carried.
Ashe.
But we have an unfinished discussion.
Which is?
The King's Horseman.
Who would not understand that fantastic analysis on cultures?
Well, the world.
You lie. You lie. That's one of the elements of books that got me the Nobel Prize, the Nobel laureate.
That. If you ask me, I think the panelists on that award only wanted to do away with you.
Explain, please.
He writes too much. He writes too much of confused words, though they say they are grammatically correct. And unfortunately for this set of panelists, Joe writes in English and not his Yoruba native dialect.
You are making sense, you know. He overwhelmed the award panel with that year in, year out. I was at duty post with him on that walk alongside that chief.
Which one? The singer?
No, the typist.
Wale Oguyemi.
Hey, that's him. He was the typist. Oh boy, we were done on that work.
With all this corroboration, I guess the panelists just simply could not read his grammar year in, year out anymore. And they couldn't disqualify him. So they found a permanent.
They gave him the award.
You see, Hunter Shaw is the only man I know that cries more than the bereaved. He speaks English more than the Englishman himself.
You are all just insane. Myopic and downright dumbscullions of the condensed type, I'm sure.
There you go. There you go again. Simply. You are all insane. Would have been clear enough. No. What's dumb scullion? I guess it comes with his foliage like gray hairs.
The hairs are tired. I guess that's why they always appear gray. He has overused them.
Like, seriously.
I had all that nonsense. Spurious. All you shit. What do you know? Before you accuse, give evidence.
So many world over, Hunter.
Give one.
I'll give 2. A critic I picked in one of her papers, you start there, written by one Jasper Jane. I quote, Act 1 of the play is justly celebrated, but is often confusing for readers if they have no prior knowledge of the text or Yoruba religion and ritual and social rituals. End of quote.
So
then this one.
You just keep this description to the next.
Yeah, Hunter Shaw. Yeah.
From where is that?
Tell me who is that? Yeah.
Tell me who was that goddess through whose lips I saw the ivory pebbles of Oya's riverbed. Not even Ogun with the finest hole. Not even he ever forged could have shaped that rise of buttocks. Not though he had the richest earth between his fingers. Harappa was no disguise for ties whose ripples shaped the rivers. Calls around the hills of Pilesi. Her eyes were new laid eggs glowing in the dark.
What on earth was that?
Poetry.
Just because you wanted a lady, which you eventually got.
Point of correction, please. It's Election who wanted the lady, not Hunter Show.
All right, agreed. So what's all that rambling about the hills of Ilese in Oyo and Oya's riverbed in going to bed with a dying native chief who chanced another man and his betrothed?
Mere metaphor. Conveying the sameness of two situations or objects, and you know what I'm like.
It's confusing.
This plays in their theaters, and they throng there to watch in droves.
Oh yes, theater.
Enough of this rubbish. I need to return to my morning chores. If you read my works and you don't understand it, I didn't write for you.
Why is he angry? Just for once in this lifetime, can't he write in kindergarten English for all to smile?
Come on, here is someone who wrote only in his Swedish language until his death. I write in lingua franca. Yes, they complain. What if I write in Zeka? And so
maybe the better.
National security. The undersecretary leans forward and draws an X, and her eardrops dangle like swords of Damocles. As the mottled butterfly is invisible against the ground, so the demon marches with the opened newspaper. A helmet worn by no one has taken power. The mother turtle flees flying under the water. That sounds all right.
The one who drew the X met the Wahala. But he's dealing with it.
And
they flee like the mother turtle did underwater.
Never mind who did, but genuinely nice one, I must say. I sense confusion in the land, though. Anyway, there's another one. The Blue House. It is night with glaring sunshine. I stand in the woods and look towards my house with its walls, as though I were recently dead and saw the house from a new angle. It has summers. Don't want the elections takeovers. So how many takeovers would that be? How many takeovers would that be? Status?
Òyìnbó lọ tán ò bàléwà dé, bàléwà lọ tán ò ìrọ̀sí lọ tán ò gòwọ́nù dé, gòwọ́nù lọ tán ò Mùrìtàlá dé, Mùrìtàlá lọ tán ò Ọbásanjọ́.
No, not coup d'etat.
Hunter show. All is takeover.
Gosh. This my head thinks too much. I am dearly sorry, Thomas Dan Stroman.
Ọbásanjọ́ lọ tán ò Ṣàgàrí wọlé, Ṣàgàrí lọ tán ò Buhari dé, Buhari lọ tán ò Babangida lọ tán ò Ṣónẹ́kan dé, Ṣónẹ́kan lọ tán ò Abacha dé. Abacha lọ tán ò Ọbásanjọ́ lọ tán ò Jonathan dé.
Jonathan
Buhari
Buhari
wọlé.
wọlé.
Tí Buhari bá lọ
Bá
tán
lọ
o,
tán, ta ló
ta ló
tún
tún
kọ̀?
kù o?
Èwo lèwo,
Èwo lèwo, èwo lèwo.
Léwo.
No, no,
èwo
no,
lèwo.
no, no, not yet, not yet. First, we deal with these corruptions, and the Boko must flee, flying like the powder turtle did underwater. Then we may think of who's next, huh? Is that okay? Huh?
The
The
Avengers.
Avengers.
Those ones corrupt too.
So now, on the show, now I certify you are old. I never know you not smell corruption from the womb of its mother.
Old age is a right just like death is. All those who know it succumb to his fangs and with grace. Yes, I am old.
Let me ask you a silly question, Kongi. Where are you going to keep us when death comes calling?
Shigidi, like you are in the museum. I certainly shall will you to meet with the rest of your kind in the museum and
not on your life. Why not in the theater hall somewhere? That's all you have taught us. Why in that decrepit hole called museum?
He doesn't have a theater to his name, unlike the rest of his dead colleagues. William Shakespeare Theatre in Stratford-upon-Avon in the United Kingdom, Bernard Shaw Theatre in Ontario, Canada, and so on and so forth. But Hunter Shaw Theatre, nowhere.
What a shame.
That's why the lots of actors you wrote for are feeling betrayed. Now, I'm planning on feeling the same way too.
Betrayed?
Certainly betrayed. In a country where there is no trust, betrayal becomes the other. In a country where money is all and humanity don't count, you'll feel betrayed. In a generation where to lie is the truth, betrayal is normal. In a country where our children have lost the sense of history, lying story will be their history. I feel betrayed myself. Should I build it to honor myself or to back up the lies my generation have made of living? Sometimes I ask myself if I have come out in the right time. There is a keep of pain reeling with unmoistened gland of regrets. A burden I bear, and it's
which we truly need to repent.
We move from there to 38.
30 what?
33. 33.
33.
All the way to 33.
Okay.
And Toma.
33.
Yes. The door opens, a stranger dressed in all white suit and shoe, except for the tie that's black, steps in. That's 33, at the top of 33.
What I have on 33 says Toma. I wrote in words. Is that correct?
From the top of it, that's not correct. It is from Ontasho. May I know you and what mission?
Oh Lord. Okay. May I know you and what?
Lord.
May I know you and what mission?
The Sasu are still there. Oh, you are muted.
My 33 is different.
Same here.
May I know you and what mission?
Check. I am Toma.
Yeah.
I am Toma. Your friend asked me to wait for him here.
My friend? I have so many of them, even enemies. Which of them is this my friend?
Elerikmi.
Elerikmi. The only one I know is the spirit. Anyways, since it's my friend, he will come along. Sit down. By the way, I am on that show.
Thank you.
Before you arrived, I was amusing myself with a write-up. Let me continue. You may love it as well. When someone who has lived in the house dies, it is repented. The dead person paints it himself, brush from the inside, and
Mystery.
You have a sense for deep words. I can see that.
I tried.
Are you from around here?
I wrote in words.
That's the brand. That's the brand of your car. I am sure. I am sure you.
In the underground station, a crowd in among placards and a staring headlights. The train came and collected faces and portfolios. Darkness next. We sat in the carriages like statues, hauled through the carving. Restraints, dreams, restraints. In stations under sea level, they sold the news of the dark people in motion sadly. Silently under the clock dials. Terminus, I followed on further. Houses, roads, skies, blue inlets, mountains opened their windows.
And that was how you arrived here?
Maybe you can help because your friend Elerinkme is delaying.
The spirit or the one you brought? What do you want?
Actually, I came on an errand to find the writer who wrote this.
Can I take a look?
Copyright.
So I can help you track the insane writer who would write to people in the land of the dead, forgetting that the dead too can reply to his insane babbles.
In vain, your bangles cast chant circles at my feet. I am a bhikkhu, calling for the first and repeated time.
Must I
weep for goats and cowries, for palm oil and sprinkled ash? Yams do not sprout unless to earth a bhikkhu's limbs. So when the snail is burnt in its shell, with the heated fragment, brand me deeply on the breast. You must know him when a bhikkhu calls again. I am the screw teeth, cracked the riddle of the palm. Remember this and dig me deeper still into the god's swollen foot. Once and the repeated time, ageless though I puke, and when you pour libations, each finger points me near the way I came.
Agbe tora more daro olende aluko tora more dosuo olende iya yoku tora.
The ground is wet with morning white dew suckles flesh beds. Evening befriends the spider, trapping flies in wine froth. Night and a bhikkhu sucks the oil from lamps. Mothers, I will be the suppliant snake, coiled on the doorsteps, yours, the killing cry.
What is the writer's offense, if I may ask?
In the beyond, they question his loyalty.
Meaning?
The bhikkhus claim he wrote these words as if he was to return home immediately, lashing out at the living and making mockery of their priest. Alas, the writer is far over 70 years now, and he is still here. Do you know him?
And if I do?
He is a traitor or an impostor. He needs to let us know in which world he resides. Is he an bhikkhu or just a mischievous thing?
Alamoire o, alamoire. Alamoire o, alamoire, alamoire o. How far you must set out at dawn, and why? Let sunrise quench your lamps and watch fade sprinkling. Twilight. Early on the home. Now shadows stretch with sound, not tree lines. The sun kindling, such receiving grateful joys and apprehensions for a naked day. Burden hawks retract. Strong. Wake aside sessions on great. But this counterplaying it was sudden winter at the depths of dawn. A lone trumpeter, cascades of white feather flakes, but it proved a futile rite. Before the right foot for joy, the left thread, and the mother queen, child may never walk when the road meets famished. Traveler, you must set forth at dawn. If this is the only time in my life that I accept an unwarranted accusation, I accept it. I am the writer.
Alamo ire o, alamo ire. Ajala,
alamo ire, alamo ire.
Okay, ladies and I want to say a very big thank you to my cast and to apologize to us. I mean, certain things are beyond our control, and network is one of those. I mean, we have been dealt seriously with by the instability of the network. So that is what the on-task. Sorry, just a minute. We could not have taken everything because of time and other considerations. So this is much. Sorry, I am having conflicting audios problem. So I'm just trying to look at what the problem is. Okay. So now to Mr. Makinde, I will just mute everyone in the meantime again and unmute Mr. Makinde Adeniran. Mankind, are you with us?
Yes. Yes, okay. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, and I believe everyone too should be able to hear you. If you can hear Mr. Makinde, just do a wave of your hand. Let me see a wave of your hand if you can hear me. Okay. My first take, it will sound like we are doing what we would have done before after talking about the fact that we already staged this play. When we received it back in 2016, you remember I gave you a call very quickly. And I said, bros, what is this? Because like the play itself alluded to, we are talking about what Prof. Shoyinka has been accused of obscurantism.
Yeah.
Of his work. And I think even in your own adaptation of his plays, and of course Thomas Transformer's poetry, there is a little bit of that. Maybe we start from there. What was going through your mind? I mean, what attracted you to that part of the place you chose and the poem from Transformer?
Okay, thank you so much. First and foremost, I'll say thank you for the reading. This is the first time that I'll, when a writer writes, often they play, no matter how much days, how much weeks we have spent on it, it becomes automatically boring to us again. You just throw it somewhere and you just want to walk away. And that was it. So what the hunter saw is a play in progress, first and foremost. And this is the first time I'm listening to it right like that, and I laughed through something. What actually informed this for me, when this first came, the first thing, I have a personal relationship with Wole Soyinka. And if there is one thing that you must know, right, about him, is that Wole Soyinka is an abstract, if I may use that word. Is an abstract, complete abstract, and I read Thomas Transformer. I read his history. I read his poems from one end to another. And I took a turn again. I read it. And the first thing that struck me was that the man was an abstract. He was speaking in multiple tongues, multiple ideas, and being a Yoruba man, I found a meeting point between the world of the living and of the dead, Wole Soyinka of the living and Transformer of the dead. And in my head, it was working that I needed to let the two of them meet. You get that?
Yeah.
They should. I imagine. I visualized what will their meeting be all about, because these are two very abstract human beings. But do you know what? They understand themselves. They understand their own languages. It is only to us who may not be able to climb into their world. And which was what Wole Soyinka said. He said, if I write my play, if you read my play and you don't understand it, the play is not for you. So don't come blaming me because you can't understand it. Take a walk, move further. And that was it for me. And again, there is one thing that I try to roll back. I mentioned having a personal relationship with Wole Soyinka. So I happen to know the inside of his house in Ijegba.
Yes.
Those of you who would have been in Ijegba, those statues are the statues in his house. When you get into that house, the first thing you are confronted with are statues from point A to point B. You just see them scattered all over the place, as if they own the house. All over the place. In his living room, you see statues all over the place. And they appear to be his most worthy property. That's all. He cares for them so I imagine them that what kind of a man will be living among statues? That means they may be having conversation behind everybody's back. And I try to replay what kind of conversation they will have. These are people you can't throw out of your house. They're there. Both of you are stuck, just like the dead. So they have become witnesses to everything that he has done. Everybody that comes into that room, they laugh at you, they take record. When you are gone, both of them with Wole Soyinka and the statues, they make conversation. But one thing you will notice is that as soon as Thomas, that character, walked into that space, they all became a team. That's the one thing you will see. And in my head, this is a play that is more of aesthetics, dance piece, you get, laced with poems. That's how it is in my head. Even though I try to adapt some of Wole Soyinka's plays, about 4, 5, 6 plays into the same, using his own language, because I didn't want to in any way deviate from their languages. Because the power of the play for me, the power of the two abstract for me, is the language they brought to it. So I tried, and then the mysticism around them, which is the song of Ogunde, this, Alamo ire o, Alamo ire, Ajala, Alamo ire, Alamo ire. And I started the play with which of these? There is that chant in the beginning. It's deliberate. Please let's check that.
That.
Okay. Aláhéré owó gbọ́ bí mo ti ń sọ. Ògún máa gbọ́ bí mo ti ń sọ. Aláhéré owó máa gbọ́ bí mo ti ń sọ. Wole Soyinka's first god of all the Yoruba, this thing is Ogun, right? Yes. And it's about journey. Yes. It's about journey. It's about so many things. It's about power. It's about, and for Wole Soyinka, that's the first thing he begs. For every morning, he prays. Don't think because they are abstract that they don't pray, that they don't have what they speak to. They only speak in different tongues that we may not understand or we may not agree with. They have what they set in front of them. They appear very mystic. And for me, these are all the patches of what it is that makes that play what the hunter saw. And what the hunter saw is a Yoruba proverb. What the hunter saw. You know, when the hunter, when they go into the bush, they see so many things. The few they brought back home, perhaps maybe the goat or the antelope, that's what you see. But perhaps they've seen spirit. Perhaps they've seen government. Perhaps they saw a lot of things. In fact, some of them get lost in the bush because where there's the Yoruba thing when you stumble into Tomasoko, there's a leaf we call Tomasoko. Tomasoko, the moment you stumble into it, yes, you go round and round in the same bush, you won't be able to get out. So even when they've gone through all this, they can only bring you the antelope that they've killed. So Omoju Oderi Konidelewa saw what the hunter saw. You know, that was where that came from. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Makinde. I will follow this up with a question because you just mentioned here that as you try to keep their language, that you want to, as much as possible, keep their language. Now, talking about adapting works from poetry to stage, from novel to screen, how much of fidelity is expected from the one who is adapting? How much of fidelity is expected to be maintained from the original work to the one you are adapting?
There is no one way to, for me, this is what I say. I say there's no one way to these things. There are just basic rules, you know, a whole lot of fidelity, total for me. But when I say total, I have a way to that. You are adapting people's works. First and foremost, you must understand. You must understand them beyond what you are reading, which means you have to go into their life's history, which means you have to understand what they do, because all of these things feeds into what you have written. While some of it are bridges, which we use bridges at times, they are fictional. We use it to bridge certain facts into reality, you know. So you have to be total. You have to understand all of this when you bring it on, because when you are making adaptation, it's almost for me like telling the history. And when you are telling history, you have to be very truthful to it. You don't go away. So you need enough information beyond those books you are adapting. You need enough information. So you have to go out there, make researches, understand what you are looking for. Of course, your focus, what the story you want to tell with the real story, because that's the license of the writer. I may take these two things, like the excerpts of the plays that I brought together, right? Yes. I have my own original story that I want to use all those to tell without deviating from the original thinking. But I have my personal story that I want to use it to tell. So these are the things that, so first and foremost, the fidelity is total in that perspective. And then you use it, you lift it to now tell, to make a point. It's like writing a thesis. You have references all over. Those references are to buttress your own viewpoint. It's the same thing, but you must understand those references. Before you go lifting them, you must understand them, that they fit into your own viewpoint.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Makinde. Just another one I would ask. I've had the pleasure also of reading other of your adaptations. That's what's the title again now? Is it the adaptation of Camwood? I can't remember what you titled it.
Yeah. Okay. It just escaped.
I can't remember what you titled it now.
Yeah.
So I want to ask this because I have asked it. I am not much of a playwright, so but a producer, and I've asked this question. We have those beautiful materials there, and adaptation is one way of interrogating existing works.
What?
In my opinion,
repeat that question. I didn't catch it.
I said, in my opinion, adaptation of existing works is one way of interrogating those works.
Yes.
Or their writers. But we, until recently, that is beginning to change. Until recently, we have not seen much of that. And I was going to ask you, what exactly is the problem with the adaptation? Should I call it industry now? The adaptation of works, to other mediums for better understanding.
Well, this is how I see it. It is not only of interrogating. It is even sometimes of appreciation.
Exactly.
You pick the work, you appreciate it, and you use it to move it to the next level. So I think it's basically about fascination. What is fascinating? What are they saying? Are they relevant to even this age? Okay, I'll give you an example. Look at Brother Jero, Trials of Brother Jero. Trials of Brother Jero is classic. Every time you take it, you can adapt. Some people did it in Lagos recently. No, it was online. We discussed it online, play reading like this.
Yes.
And we discussed that play.
I was part of that.
Okay, you were part of that. And one of the things I said is, let's leave the old story that this thing fits into. How would this same thing fit into our contemporary age? And somebody came up and pieces it into our contemporary this, and it fits. So it's sometimes about all this, probably people are tired of interrogating, or they find them every player, every writer is a prophet of a sort. They speak into the future. They speak into the realm that is beyond the ordinary. If you take it so that may be it. Precisely for me, those are the two things. Is either I'm appreciating it. I did an adaptation of The Famished Road. I did adaptation of The Famished Road. But do you know what brought me to doing that adaptation? I was vexed. After reading The Famished Road, like 3, 4, 5 times, I kept reading it, and I saw that Ben-Okri was trying to paint. In my thought, I feel Ben-Okri has not done enough painting what the real Abiku is for me, the Ogbanje and all of that. In the real African context, he wanted to paint it for the Western, for the Western reader to understand, thereby turning it into a Wizkid. And Abiku's realm goes beyond the Wizkid. It's just mystery sometimes. You just have to go into it, and that was what brought about me making that adaptation, bringing an Abiku into, I call it Abiku, and that is it for me. I needed to interrogate what he has written, and that is it for me. And in a way, it is to appreciate what he has written, because he wrote something that was fantastic. But I just found that I don't need you to explain, to let the Western readers, you don't need to make so much attempt in explaining Abiku for them. Let them find out what the Abiku is all about. Use it. That's my own feeling. That's how and that brought about a stage adaptation of The Famished Road, Abiku. So these are the things. It depends on the writer. It depends on what you are looking at.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, Jerry.
I have Toju has a question for you. I'll just quickly unmute it. Yeah, Toju, here you go.
Hello, everybody.
Hello,
Tony.
My chair.
You want to bench
well
your
done,
chair.
Mr. Adeshewo, and well done, Makinde Adeniran FTA.
Thank you.
I am great. I'm very happy that I didn't get to miss this. And I would just like you to shed some light on some issues surrounding adaptations.
Okay.
So there are works that we know as adaptations. There are works that we know as inspired by.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please, sir, please, can you help us? And let's know what the limitations are. Because, and then, because there's, and I can cite examples. With King Babu, Shoinka says that he's inspired by Ubi Roy.
Yeah.
And I know that, for instance, someone like Tonyo Shinake, in creating What's This All About?
Yeah.
It is he's not called it an adaptation of Rosa Albert.
Yeah.
What he says is done is a Nigerian street version. Just for academics and also for those who are listening, who would like to be able to draw such distinctions. At what point does it leave being an adaptation and becomes inspired by? Because look, a famous officer has The Engagement, which is also an adaptation of a French play. I can't remember the name at the moment. Some years back, Ifeoma Fafonwa wrote, did her version and titled it Love and Recession.
I saw that.
So please just help us draw the line where we know when it leaves being an adaptation to a work loosely inspired by or a different version of something. Please help us, sir.
All of that adjective is to just give it is to describe what you have done. An adaptation is simply take one, right, and turn it directly and turn it into this. That's an adaptation. Inspired by is your story, but you read that story and it woke you up to certain reality that may not be necessarily that same story that you read, but that thing inspired it, which means there are some elements that you compared and brought down. Those are the thing, you know. For me, it's just English word, you know, adaptation. But how many? Because there's another one. Luckily, I was part of the making of the Wale Soyinka's King. Was it King Babu that you mentioned?
Yes, King Babu. King Babu.
Yes, King Babu. I was from the first title. The first title for King Babu was Bacha, something Bacha, you know. So I was at the conference where that thing is being put together. After the first writing, before it became book, I was at that in Switzerland. We talked about it, and one was able to understand that Wale Soyinka saw, you know, from the Ubura's context, what he has written, Wale Soyinka saw a semblance in what was happening in Nigeria as at that time.
Yes.
And that inspired him writing another version of Ubura's story that you get. It purely inspired, but Wale Soyinka wanted to talk about Sonny Abacha. But the play of Ubura inspired it, which is simply what it is. He wrote his own story using his own understandable characters, you know, identified characters. But when you is an adaptation of a particular work, you are using the same character of that work, only recontextualizing it or domesticating it to your own surrounding. or to any other surrounding that you feel like, but you are still using the same characters. Okay, when they made adaptation, Macbeth, the Yoruba adaptation of Macbeth, it was question of language. The story remains the same. The characters won't change. You get what I'm saying? That's adaptation.
Yes, yes.
But when it is inspired by, they don't necessarily have to be that character. In fact, inspired by is all about respect. When you write it and you still use inspired by, it's all about respect. You are respecting the ones, it's just being truthful to the cause. I read this story and I was inspired to write this other story. You get so that's it for me. That's it. You must understand it. The moment you take another play and you domesticate it, or you want to do using the same character, using the same setting, even when you adapt the setting, right? It is all in view to domesticate it for understanding, for better understanding for your audience. When we were doing William Shakespeare in those years and we adapted it into Yoruba, we just wanted our Yoruba audience who will not understand that English or that type of English to understand the story. So the setting, everything remains the same. I don't know if this cuts through with you.
Yes, Makinde, this does answer a bulk of the question, but I'm just bringing you back to specific, please. I'm sorry, but I'm just bringing you back to specific. So Femi Osofison has his own the engagement. I still go back.
Okay.
And Tyrone Terence goes to do Yoruba romance.
Yes.
Same story of 3 characters. Same story, same thing. And then down the line, Ifeoma Fafunwa releases Love and Recession. Now, the one that Femi Osofison wrote, I don't know, sorry, I can't get the name of the French play that Femi Osofison adapted to become The Engagement. Now, we accept Femi Osofison's own to be an adaptation. What becomes of because it's the same characters, the same locale, what will we classify Yoruba romance as or Love and Recession as? Will we say they are also adaptations?
I only heard of Yoruba romance. I didn't watch it. And I've not read that script. So I may not be able to justify, but from your description, if all these things are the same, right?
Yes.
Oh, character name, character, this thing. If they are the same, then they are adaptation of that of a Femi Osofison's Engagement. It may not be of the French.
Okay.
It's an adaptation of Femi Osofison's Engagement.
Okay.
But in the case where the characters, the setting are not the same, right? You cannot say that is an adaptation. That may be just inspired by.
Okay. Thank you, Maki. Thank you.
Hey,
Mike,
thank you. Hey, my person.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. This is Sheon Odukoya. Jerry asked me to just quickly take over for him. I think he's having network issues. Thank you, our guest for today, Makinde. Chinelo, I'm told that you have a question. I'm told that Chinelo has a question. Chinelo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. So Jerry says you have a question. Please ask your question.
Okay. What I wanted to ask was, sorry, I don't know a lot of the books being referenced about, but I just wanted to find out what are the specific names of the book. If someone could just type them out first, and okay. And I think I'll remember the next week. I forgot the second question I had, but could someone please help us to type out the names of these books and the programs we mentioned?
I think Torished, you should help to do that. He mentioned, I mentioned Wole Soyinka's, what's that now?
King Babu.
King Babu.
King Babu.
Yes, King Babu. Yes. King Babu was earlier, before he became King Babu, he was Bashabash. He was Bashabash. I remember now. Then later he became King Babu when it was published. I think he mentioned the engagement written by Femi Oshofi's son.
Yes.
Yes, okay. And then Yoruba Romance, written by Tyrone Terence. Then which other one by Ifeoma Fafunwa?
Love and Recession.
Love and Recession.
Only need your earpiece. I will bring out for me.
May I ask another question? This Tyrone Terence is in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you say? Again?
The Tyrone Terence, is he a Nigerian?
Tyrone Terence is a Nigerian.
Yoruba Romance.
Yes, he's a Nigerian. Don't mind him. Don't mind him. He has a Yoruba name.
I think he's based in Abuja.
He has a Yoruba name.
Tyrone is in Abuja at the moment.
Is he still in Abuja?
Yes.
No, he's abroad.
Okay.
Oh, he's abroad. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think he's still in Abuja. Okay.
As I'm thinking about the distinction.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, your question, please.
No, I don't have a question.
Okay, so I have a question. Our guest for today, still on the issue of adaptations. So how does it, could you please enlighten us, how does it go when it comes to adapting an existing work into a musical?
Oh yeah. Okay. This is one trouble.
Do you just reset songs, or so?
Whoa. You see, in Nigeria, what we write is that we call musical. Unfortunately, it is not. Musical is not written the same way you write a drama script. However, there is a process. The process, because it's musical, is different from music and drama, Because it's musical, the process is after writing the drama, right? The script is then handed over to a musicologist who then look at the script. And that's why when you want to write, I have handled some workshop where I've had to teach people on, look, the reason some of our musicals are still looking the way they are looking on stage is because we use drama script and then we try to insert songs which will not make them original. It's the same line. Some people will, yes, you can put this in, but it must be planned right from the scripting. It is not from production that you start planning a musical, which is the mistake we make. We start planning a musical right from production. No, it is from the script, the planning of the script. It goes through a musicologist who then have scored whatever they need to score in that. That discussion would have, before the script becomes finally a document to work with for a production. In fact, the rehearsal of a musical starts first and foremost from the studio, music studio. Not from the blockings and all. So this is the process that we need to understand, that the scripting of a musical, it must, no matter what you do, that script after writing, right, it goes through the musicologist who then scores. In fact, in some cases, when you want to have it to license, to register it, you ensure that that script, the music aspect of it, has a score sheet. Because it helps. By the time you move to rehearsal space, It is not something you start to dunk. That's the document. That is the same way we take a drama script. When we take a drama script, you can almost understand. You take a Wole Soyinka piece or an Olarotimi play, where almost all the direction, Olarotimi was a director before and a fantastic writer. So his plays, the directions are clear. When you take that script, if you are not the kind of director who is very creative and wanting to do something else, you will stay dogmatic with his directions. It's the same thing you have to make with a musical script. You have to understand that until we get to that point, before we begin to see that lopsidedness of what we do from script to stage.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Thank you.
Because I know it's a whole different world, but it's quite misunderstood by so many. I know it requires a lot of work and a lot of input and all of that, but a lot of people do not understand what it takes. Thank you very much. Is there anybody? I think Jerry is still having issues with his network. Is there anybody in the house who has another question?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Extra.
Esma. Okay, thank you, Sir Makinde. I really appreciate so much you've said. And thank you, Anshio, for asking that question on the musical aspect. I'm glad that a lot of my assumptions on musical theater is what I'm hearing now. And I wouldn't mind if we have more templates on how these musical pieces are actually written down. But my question still goes down to adaptation, though. I want to know, in the place of adaptation, where is the space for free expression? And if there's space for free expression, to what limit does one have that rod in order to avoid the loss of the originality of a story that's been adapted?
You see, as a writer, you have your point of view. All those other scripts that you are adapting, they are your reference points to your point of view. Your point of view, right, is your free space.
Okay, sir.
It's your free space. That is where you are. Is when you write a thesis. There's no way you submit a thesis and there are no references. They won't accept that thing. But those references, whether positive or negative, they are only marshalling your own point home.
Yes, sir.
And that is where your free space is. It is not. You see, you use all those things to make your own argument. That's the way it is.
Yes,
you use it to make your own argument. But it is not to, you see, what we are doing is carrying of information. And you don't distort information simply because you want to make the way you understand that information that has been given without deliberately trying to distort it, you get using it to make your own point. That is where your freedom is. That is where your freedom is, because that is your creative impetus. That's your creative impetus. That's where your aesthetics is. That's what you want to do. But the moment you miss out on that, you can't really have an adaptation. It's like you are rewriting someone else's play. Your play is your play. Even when you are making those adaptations. I don't know. Abiku. What I did with Abiku is I took all the characters in the Famished Road. I took all the characters, Madame Koto, Azaro. I took all the characters and I used all the scenarios, but there was a point I wanted to make. And I made that point. I made the point. So these are the things. This is where your expression is. But you must know that in writing, even freedom, right, has its limits. You must understand that where your freedom stops, another one begins. You must understand all those. They are metrics for me as a writer. They are metrics. I worked with Professor Ahmed Yerima on Aremu, I was the assistant director, and he wrote the play. And we talk a lot. The two of us, we talk a lot. And he said something. The larger part of what you see as dialogue, conversation in that script, they were words spoken originally by those characters he brought to the book. But he used those original words. I said, even in some of our novels, that because Obasanjo's Aremu is Obasanjo's life history. You get, and Obasanjo sat, saw the play through, and he gave a comment. He could even follow it because he remembered those words, who spoke them, and all of that. And he will tell you, oh, no, it was, when I spoke this word, this was what I meant. But you see, when you speak, the understanding of other people, that is where your freedom is. He has spoken. You are now using it for your own reference point. It is now left for him to see that what he has spoken, these are the different meanings. But you are not distorting what he has said. So those are the things. They are very tricky, but again, simple. You just have to apply yourself to it. Don't try to play. You see, when a writer is not humble, you get, when you are not humble to your materials, you end up talking all through. A writer don't talk all through on his play. You allow your character to talk. So what we do is we create the characters, and you allow the character. When the characters stop talking, you can't write. You just stand up and leave. But when you are not humble to those materials, right, you will force what you want to say and your own ideas into their mouths. And that's the way I see it. That's the way I carry it through.
Okay.
Great.
Back to you, Sean.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was just such a great conclusion. Chinelo, could you hold on for a second? I see. Are you the one using Infinix Hot S3X?
That's me, ma.
Yes, that's me.
Okay. Ezra, you are done with your question. So over to Chinelo. Chinelo, over to you.
Okay, so my question is now I have been going to theaters, like watching plays and a lot of them. So but I noticed one thing, that there's a very there's little to no children's theater available, right?
Yeah.
And I'm being moved to do something in that area. But being that I have no background in theater writing, and I especially love musicals because I grew up watching Disney, and I saw a lot of Snow White, Hercules, so many of those things, and these are things children enjoy. So when I have all those things that I'm doing. So, but the thing is, I don't know if I have the right to do that kind of writing, since I don't have the background, and I don't know either if I should be telling the story. So how do I go about it, even if I am to start? And do I have the right to even do that when I clearly don't have a background for playwriting?
See, first and foremost, is a gift. It's a passion that you run after. To write, you can write, but I don't. What I first say is, if you want to write, start writing. Just start writing. Everything that comes to your mind, start writing them. When you write them for when you write them for a long time, with time, they will begin to have form. You see that you are falling into something that has form. You begin to tell your story. The first thing is the passion. Yeah. The first thing for you is the passion. And I think you have that already. You get. So start writing.
Okay.
Start writing. Start writing. Nobody will stop you from writing. It's your pen. It's your paper, right? It's your mind. It's your space. It's your idea. So start writing. Just start writing. With time, knowing your target, with time, all those things that you are writing. Some of us who end up, I never planned to be a writer. In fact, I hate writing. I just hate it. I got into writing out of frustration. And I'll tell you a bit of it. I was purely trained as a director and an actor, and I wanted to do that because, yes, I already have a place in that and doing my thing. But I happen mistakenly, and I'm using that word, right, with every sense of responsibility. Mistakenly, I got into exile with Wole Soyinka. And I happen not to be one of those abroad freak. I wanted to come home. But because of the situation, I could not come. You know, I sat through, and so many things were going through my mind about my nation, about what new world I've been exposed to. Out of that frustration came the need to begin to write the story. And that was how. That was how. I only write, in those days, I wrote just as a director. You know, director, some directors are way out. They want to rewrite every play that they see. They want to, that's the kind of person, because I just think beyond the writer.
Yeah.
Say, no, this thing can be like this. And I start direct. That's what I do. And that's what I do. That's the kind of writing. But when I got into that space, the writer in me came up. And it came up so violently, you know. And from then, I have not stopped. I realized that the thing that had been troubling me as a director is that part of me that had always been a writer, you know. And if you are not lazy, because first thing that takes writing from you, right, is the laziness to sit down and write every rubbish that you think you can write. Don't stop writing. That's the bottom line. But you have the freedom to write, please. It is your money even when you write those rubbish and you want to publish it. As long as you see someone who will publish it for you in Nigeria, it's your money. So go on writing. Don't get tired about that. Back to you.
Thank you. One more question.
Wow.
Is a follow-up. Is a follow-up. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you deal, like you mentioned, is about writing, right? And then go on writing, but then how do you battle that fear of a lack of imagination? Like, yes, you write, probably you've done some journalism writing and other types of writing, but not necessarily playwriting. So how do you grip to that fear of, I lack the imagination to do this type of writing that is different from what I know how to write?
Reading. Read, research, make sure you are updated in the kind of life you live in terms of information. Don't take information for granted. Information don't just happen. They happen for so many reasons, you know, because people are unwilling to see that information has 1,001 other areas of happening. They think it must be one way. And that is where you close down your imagination. You know, all of us that write, you know, some of us get into the state of creating, and that's where, you know, the first word I used about Wole Soyinka, if you were at the beginning of this, I said Wole Soyinka's life, Wole Soyinka is an abstract. You get? Yes. If all of us are seeing it this way, he will then begin to see it that way. And then from there, he will blow his own imagination. Like Death and the King's Horseman. A whole lot of people, we have read Death and the King's Horseman. We appreciate it, but we never know that Death and the King's Horseman, like, was actually a true story that he heard. And then he blew it beyond proportion to say what he needed to say in terms of cultures. You see? So read, research, and be updated in your information. Don't take information for granted. Read, and read. He expands your thinking. He expands it.
Thank you very much. Our time is fast spent. Our time. Jerry says to take Israel one more question.
Yes,
Israel.
He has a question.
Israel, and then we should be wrapping this up.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes,
yes,
we can.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
We can hear you.
The wonderful.
We can hear you from everywhere.
Okay.
Okay, Israel, we can't hear you anymore. Or Jerry, did you mute us?
No, I didn't.
We can't hear Israel. Israel, can you hear me?
If we can't hear Israel, let's take Toju then, and then we wrap up.
I wish I can ask the question on his behalf.
Over to you, Toju.
Mr. Toju doesn't have a question.
I
wish I can ask the question in his behalf.
I am always having question, but I'm just trying to support what Makinde has just said.
Okay.
Read and read again, because you must know the rule to be able to break it.
To break it.
Exactly. Yes.
You understand?
Exactly.
You must know the material. If you ever want to do any kind of adaptation, it's important to know the original material.
Yes.
That way you can have a point of view. So read again. See, I have plenty things to say, but I have to cut it short next time on holding talks.
We'll bring you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We are bringing you on holding talk, so just wait for your turn.
Yes,
Israel is here. Israel is here now.
Yes, okay, quickly, let me just go to what I want to say and forget about the preamble. Basically, back then while I was in UI, there was this thing about one of my directors that I always say, you don't doctor a master script. You don't doctor a master script. I'm sure someone like Toju will understand what I'm talking about. And
I know that statement.
Yes. I don't
know that master.
Carry on.
So where do you draw the line between understanding the need, what you actually need from a particular work? Okay? Because I sometimes doing the lengthy play or doing the whole thing might actually go against what you want to actually use that particular work to achieve. I don't know whether I'm making sense.
But yeah.
You use play like Oga play, for instance, sir. You hear things like you don't doctor a master's play and all the rest of it. And we're talking about understanding what it means by adaptation and understanding how to work with a script without without tampering unnecessarily with the core idea of what the writer has put in.
Okay, Israel. Yeah. Israel,
yes,
first and foremost, let me just tell you something. Yeah, you don't touch a master's this thing. Those are old saying. You get what I'm saying? When the days when you don't do it. First and foremost, you are not doctoring his play. You are writing your own play. You are only using it, right, to say what you want to say. You are not touching his play. Whatever you have gone to take there, whatever you are adapting from that, you are writing your own play first and foremost. That's what you should know. It is only where you don't understand the original work, right? Yeah. You can't then adapt it. Don't go there. If you don't understand it, and if you cannot, and when I say understanding it, it's not this mere reading, sit there and just, that kind of reading for exams. That's not what we are saying. You research it. When I wanted to do, the first year I left Ife and I wanted to do Death and the King's Osman, as it was, and I wanted to do something different. You know what I did? Olonwiyo, that everybody will play with a man ever since. After understanding that play, because that was my first time of being exposed to Wole Soyinka, after spending like 4 months with him in London. And I managed to come home. When I directed Death and the King's Osman, Olonwiyo, I played it with a woman. I understood my facts. You know what I did? That you go into the history of the Olonwuyos in Yoruba land, because Olonwiyo is not just Olonwiyo. We all know the history of Olonwiyo. Wole Soyinka too only used Olonwiyo, so I know the history of Olonwiyo. I went there. In the Yoruba culture, are there women who can be Olonwiyo? Yes, they can be. So in my directing that play, when I brought it on stage and I was bold as a student, as a fresh student out, I was bold to use a woman, Adeola Faleye, to play the Olohun Yo. Yes, and I used it. All my lecturers who came to see, they were looking at me. Chuck Mike came, saw it, and Chuck Mike was like, wow. Wow. He said 20 years ago when they did this play in the same hall, that a lot of people who saw it, he had to address my cast, that a lot of people who came to see the play, directed by Wole Soyinka, by the end of the play, most of them slept off. They had to wake them. But because I wanted something beyond show, but I understood the Olohun Yo concept. You get, I understood immensely the Election Oba's concept of death. So I understood that culture. I understood that tradition. So I went into it with that belief and understanding the principal point of Wole Soyinka, where Wole Soyinka was coming with it. Understanding that gave me all the license, you know, to break what I needed to break, to say what I needed to say. So it is not you, as a writer, it is not you doctoring a master's play. It is you attempting to write your own play, but using a reference point. That's what you should first understand. Because when that play comes out, first and foremost, it is not that master's play that they are seeing. They are seeing your play. Only that it is an adaptation of. The moment you let your play down, right, for the original play, you have only stolen another person's play. You have not written a play. Even when it's an adaptation, it is your play. You must hold firmly to it. And you must understand that.
That's my job. Well done, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much.
Well, thank
Chairman.
you.
Okay,
thank
Jerry,
you,
you're there. All right.
Thank you, Sean, for having my back yet again. Thank you, everyone. Professor Ismail Abala is no longer here. Would like to close this a very simple, one last question, and this time around to His Excellency, the Ambassador of Sweden.
I was asking if he was still around.
Yes, he's been here all through. I mean, thank you for
I'm
staying
still here.
Thank you. So, Your Excellency, sir, back in 2011, when Thomas Transtromer won the Nobel Prize, I mean, as has become always the case with winners of major literary
No,
prizes
he's on top of the bookshelf. Sorry.
around the world, there was an outcry about whether he deserved to have it, whether it shouldn't have been him. I mean, these are the kind of reactions we have come to see year in, year out, not just for Nobel Prize, but for literary prizes around the world. I don't know. I would like to have your take on that and how Transtromer is perceived in Sweden. Secondly, is that I have had the pleasure, the opportunity of being in Sweden for theater festival, I think with Shehu here. And so back in Sweden, you've got very big, theater industry. Since your arrival in Nigeria, I don't know if you have had the opportunity of being to the theater. I would just want to, your closing remark, to be about in that direction as to what the theater in and the role of government in what we see as the Swedish theater today, as your closing remark. Who is that?
Thank you, Jerry. I had some problems hearing you actually, but still regarding the Nobel Prize, it's always controversial every year. I would say it was very controversial last year. So it's given to a novelist, someone who makes thick books and lots of thick books, and this is a poet. Thomas Transtromer is a poet, and very short and condensed poems, as we said earlier. So that was controversial in a way. But I think many people welcomed that also a poet can get the Nobel Prize. And there had been speculations for years that he should be given it before he died, because, you know, usually, always the Nobel Prize is given to someone alive, still alive. So there was a pressure a little bit to give him before he died, and they did. But I think that he's not controversial anymore, especially not after his death. So he's very much appreciated. And it's always a little bit sensitive giving a Swedish citizen the Nobel Prize. You know, it's always a little bit delicate, perhaps, because it's an international prize given by the Swedish Academy. So, but I would say he's very much appreciated, and there is a pride today that he finally got it. He was a very special man, and completely mute. You know, he was muted literally since 1990. So it was a big tragedy at the same time.
Jerry, I can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I am muted. Thank you, Your Excellency. Yeah, we appreciate your time, and we appreciate your input into this session. And we do hope that we get to do a lot more together. I mean, this very play actually had was selected at some point for a festival in Kenya, and then in Sweden, and one other place. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, we just could not make it to those festivals, you know, because of challenges from our end. So we want to thank you, you know, for coming around. And to Mr. Makinde, thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, we can't thank you enough. You have always been there for Aroja Royal Theatre and for theater in Nigeria and beyond. But I have a request. I mean, you just mentioned here today that this remains a work in progress. And I hope that you would have the time and the peace of mind to return to that place. And when it is updated, to also give us the benefit of being the first, you know, to put and in fact, we are also thinking of publication. I mean, when the final copy is done, let us know. We will be pretty much interested in publishing it for the general audience. May God help us. So once again, I want to say a very big thank you. We appreciate you all for being here for this edition of Holding version 9. Next Wednesday is another edition where we are dealing with poetry. We are dealing with 2 poets when we meet on Wednesday at 4 p.m. If you have a chance, we'll appreciate if you can also be here with us. And enjoy the rest of the weekend. And please, keep safe. Thank you. You're welcome all. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, man.
I love you.
His strength.